Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. I'm Pam Schumann, and I'm the worship associate today for our guest speaker, David Martin. I say guest, but he's really one of us. Many of you know David, of course. He was with us for a long time, and he's back with us today, which is wonderful. We're also excited to welcome you, whoever you are, to our worship service this morning. We're so glad to have you with us, whether you're joining us in person or virtually, or whether you've been here for the first time today. I think I did see some visitors this morning, so welcome to you all. And whether you've been here for longer than you can remember, kind of like me. Here at Horizon, we welcome people of all faiths and of no faith in particular. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, you are welcome among us. And now I turn it over to David. Thank you.
Good morning. I do have a couple of announcements that I've been asked to share with you, and I wanted to not begin this service of worship today without acknowledging the state of our union, the state of our world. And so, in true UU spirit and fashion, Lauren Daniel has fashioned a board that's located in the back of the sanctuary. And I invite you to take the opportunity, as you will, during the service, after the service, anytime you're at the church this week, to just share an expression of what you're going through during this time, as it relates to our political situation in this country, locally, and the state that the world is in. We will breathe together today, and we will find balance, and we will find hope, and we will journey together and try to build something better in this world. And as we build something better, I would like to bring it to your attention that following the service, there will be a brief informational meeting in the sanctuary here about being a greeter or an usher. That sounds like a recruitment pitch, so I encourage you to get involved. That's a good thing. There will also be a GA worship will be broadcast live in the fellowship hall at 11:30, and you are invited to transition over there following the service and participate via, is it satellite anymore, or is it, what? However it comes to us, it's live, and you are invited to be a part of that. So. I must say, it's good to see you. And I invite you to join with me in the call to worship. And in our call to worship, I will be sharing with you the words of Thomas Rhodes. All of us are beautiful. We come in a variety of colors, shapes, and sizes. Some of us grow in bunches. Some of us grow alone. Some of us need reading glasses. Some of us are cupped inward, and some of us spread ourselves wide. Some of us are old and dried and tougher than we appear. Some of us are still in bud. Some of us grow low to the ground, and some of us stretch toward the sun. Some of us feel like weeds, sometimes. And some of us carry seeds, sometimes. Some of us are prickly, sometimes. Some of us smell. but all of us are beautiful. What a bouquet of people we are.
And now we will recite our affirmation rather,
I'm going to light the chalice.
and, well, I lit the chalice already, okay. I jumped in there, yes, and lit the chalice, I'm sorry. Would you like to read our chalice lighting anyway, or?
Let's just join together and affirm our faith and the reason why we are here.
Love is the doctrine of our church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in harmony with the earth. Thus do we covenant together. And now, if you would please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing hymn number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come in the gray hymnal.
Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Well, my sermon topic today is on play, and part of play includes surprise. So I have a surprise for you. There will be no time for all ages. Surprise. I do invite you to stay if you would like to stay. I will be sharing, as part of my sermon, a story from godly play. We know it in the UU world as spirit play. So you're invited to stay if you want to, but we will also sing you out if you would like to join your friends in another place. As we enter this time in which we will be giving and receiving our gifts to one another, we know that our financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work. We are so grateful for this time to commit together to ensure that the funds we gather are done so collectively, and that we do a greater good for ourselves and our world. May there be an offering today to sustain and grow the life and the mission of this congregation. May we give in love and hope.
Our first reading today comes from Robin Tanner, a poem called The First Pair of Underpants. I wonder, did God's heart, I mean the love, mushy, endearing part of God, that part, the heart that I don't really believe in as a thing with pulses. Anyway, did that heart, did it break just a little when God realized, oh no, they have made leaves into underpants? If God says things like underpants, and then the weight hit God like the first time you watch your child feel self-conscious, hold back the loud belly laugh, or worse yet, bring down their eyes because the shoes you bought aren't good enough. Did God's heart break just a little to see the beauty of freedom slip from their hearts as the heat and heaviness of shame washed over the two in that garden? Who now knew not enough, no more naked, no more belly laugh, and for the first time wondered, am I good enough? Did God cry a little, maybe even turn away, so they wouldn't see the tears? This ends the first reading.
As we enter into a time of prayer and meditation and a sharing of joys and sorrows, I would like to take note of the auspiciousness of this week. It's been a week of events, has it not? And there may be another event that occurred this week. It occurred just yesterday, in fact, that we may not be aware of. But yesterday was the 75th anniversary of the publication of Anne Frank's diary. As we know, Anne Frank died in a Nazi concentration camp along with every member of her family except her father. And after the war, her father was given her diary that was found in the place where they hid for 2 years from the Nazis. And he established the Anne Frank Foundation and had the diary published. It was originally published as The Diary of a Young Girl. Michael Rosen is a poet, and for a while he was the Children's Poet Laureate. And on the 75th anniversary of the publication of her diaries, he wrote a poem. And he said, I had to write a sonnet because it's the only way that I could find space within the words to encounter this paradox of this life of this child who, when you read her diaries, was so full of life and yet ended so tragically. So I'd like to share that with you this morning. Sonnet for Anne Frank. Since you took us into that attic space, no room under the eaves has ever been the same. Wherever we go, our homes or others, whenever we dip and duck under beams, you are in the shadows, writing pages, laughing, crying, eating, daring to love, imagining a world better than yours. How you wrote leads us to think we know you. You compressed so much life into that loft, which we pour over and love you for it. Yet the real world, not the one you imagined, didn't allow you to live and write anymore. Each time we read, we struggle to enjoy your love of life while knowing how it ended. I invite you to just enter into the silence with me for a few minutes. To breathe together as a community of faith, as a community of people who envision a better world. And just as silence is part of a piece of music, I ask that we allow it to be a part of this time that we have. So in the next few moments, let's just breathe together. As we breathe together, let the life-giving oxygen that we take in and fill our lungs with, as it passes the oxygen to the blood, and the cells in the blood take it to all parts of our body, healing and restoring, reinvigorating, infusing us with life. Let yourself feel that. And as we breathe together, hear these words from Andre Moll. All that we share is sacred. As we gather together, may we remember when you share with me what is most important to you, that is where listening begins. When I show you that I hear you, when I say your life matters, that is where compassion begins. When I open the door to greet you, that is where hospitality begins. When I venture out to bring you to shelter, that is where love begins. When I risk my comfort to ease your suffering, when I act against hatred, violence, and injustice, that is where courage begins. When we experience the full presence of each other, because of our shared humanity, because of our differences, that is where holy gratitude begins. May this space be a table that is not complete until all are welcome. May this table be a space of beauty where together we create a series of miracles and where all that we share is sacred. May it be so. Our second reading this morning is called The Falling Apart. It comes from the Complete Guide to Godly Play, Volume 6, by Jerome Berryman. When God created everything, God said, "It is good." And God put God's own image in the creatures that walk the earth. In the midst of the creation, there was a wonderful garden. It was God's garden. Everything was there. But everything was so close. It was all together. God was with the rocks and the plants and the animals, and they were with God and each other. All the people were also together in one person who was called everyone. Or, in their language, Adam, Eve. For Eve was there too. She was always there. She came from Adam, so they were kind of a Adam, Eve. In the middle of the garden grew two trees, and God told Adam, Eve, that they should not eat the fruit from these trees. One tree was about differences, and one tree was about forever. If you ate the fruit from the tree of differences, you would know about differences. And if you ate from the forever tree, you would live forever. Now, the serpent was more clever than any other creature that God made. And he suggested that Adam and Eve just taste the fruit from the tree of differences. And they did. Adam and Eve ate from the tree of differences, and things fell apart. They became Adam and Eve. The difference between them and God also came apart. The difference between good and evil did too. God called for them and they hid, but God found them. They did not know how to be with God anymore because of all the differences. There were good and evil, close and far, high and low, God and people, Adam and Eve, and many more differences. The differences also did something wonderful. Now, Adam and Eve could take things apart and put them back together again. They could be creators, almost like God. Almost. They couldn't make something out of nothing, but they could make something out of the differences. After the differences, Adam and Eve could not go back to when everything was all together in the garden. They could only go forward, and they did. God sent Adam and Eve out of the garden. An angel and a sword were put at the edge of the garden, so they could not go back, but only forward. God went with them on their journey to help them be the best creators they could be, and to be with God in this new way, and to stay one with God. Yes. I thought we were supposed to sing another song. I realize in sharing that story with you that I am not talking to a traditional Christian congregation. But I hope you'll forgive me. It's a very special story. And I think it has a lot to say today. My fondest hope at this moment is that you are not searching for some kind of literal meaning in that story, because it's not there. When I spoke to Meredith back in May about speaking here at Horizon, she said that the theme for the month of June is celebration of blessing. And very quickly and very graciously said, but you don't have to stick with that theme. You can come up with one of your own. And what I didn't say to Meredith in our conversation was it was somewhat of a coincidence that the theme of June is blessing, because I had just spent a month at the hospital where I work, immersed in reflection and practice around the idea of blessing. You see, in healthcare traditionally, there's a week in May that's set aside as Nurses Week. Do we have any nurses in here? Hi. So during Nurses Week, there's also all sorts of celebrations and awards and to honor the work that nurses do. And where I work, it's been tradition for the chaplains to honor the sacredness of the work that nurses do by blessing the hands of those who want it. And even though the week is set apart to honor nurses, we always extend the invitation to any staff member who works there, from housekeeping and janitorial staff to the food service staff, all the way down to the CEO. This year, instead of a week, it was decided to celebrate nurses for the entire month of May. So my chaplain colleagues and I had the privilege of blessing an awful lot of hands. I still catch faint whiffs of eucalyptus oil, even now, because we blessed a lot of hands. So when Meredith said, this month's theme is blessing, it felt like what the psychologist Carl Jung would call synchronicity. A meaningful coincidence that doesn't seem to have any connection to, a beginning cause, but somehow helps us, confirms that we're attuned to the universe or something bigger than us. So it seems appropriate today to continue with the theme of blessing. So I wanted to talk with you today about the blessedness of play. To be in this sanctuary today in worship with my community of faith and friends, and to reconnect with you is truly a blessing. And as I've given more time and the thought to what it means for something or someone to be blessed, I have come to the conclusion that our presence with one another this morning is a blessing. It's a blessing in the making. I think that's just the way some blessings are. They don't come to us all at once. They come to us little by little in the making. They're like fruit. They're meant to be enjoyed. They're meant to feed, nourish us. They're meant to be sweet. But like fruit, they begin as a seed. And they need time to grow, time to mature, and to ripen with that sweetness that makes them a blessing. It's the sweetness that feeds our spirits and nourishes our souls. Blessings need time. You don't want to bite into a blessing that isn't quite ripe yet. There's nothing worse than a green blessing. And so the seeds of blessedness that I feel here today didn't begin here today. They actually began about 10 years ago when my dear friend, Kent Taylor, some of you know, Kent and I became very curious about this church on Hebron Parkway. It had this very interesting piece of artwork on the lawn, and it had quotes on the sign. And the quotes were pithy and uplifting. They didn't admonish us to consider our eternal destination, smoking or non-smoking, but rather spoke to the better aspects of our humanity. And so one day we met here in the parking lot, and as we came inside, we were warmly greeted with friendly smiles and a bulletin. When the service began, we sang songs that sounded a lot like the hymns that we grew up with, that we sang in church when we were children. But they were somewhat different. Not one song about sin or guilt or shame. Not once did we sing anything begging for forgiveness or pleading for mercy or telling us what horrible creatures we are, worms. And then we stood and we greeted one another and we affirmed together that we were here in this place to learn to live together peacefully and to seek knowledge and truth and to serve and to love one another and to take care of the planet and to do all of this in a community of freedom and respect. Then the minister got up and spoke. I don't remember a whole lot about what he said, but I do remember he gave us permission to disagree with him if we wanted to. And that was really all it took. Kent and I began to meet here regularly each week until eventually we joined, probably close to a year. We seemed to keep missing that one Sunday that was set aside where we were invited to ask questions about the church if we wanted to join and get more information. We just kept, somehow we just kept missing that. But in April 2013, we attended and we signed the book. I think my name is in there and then Kent's is right under mine, or maybe the other way around, but we're on the same page. So for me, the seeds of blessing were planted a long time ago. And there was something else. Blessings need time. But there was this air of playfulness and lightheartedness. I mean, you didn't dare walk in with a book in your hand and without being asked, "What you reading?" And then depending on who asked you, you might get into a really vibrant discussion about what you're reading. And if you met 3 people, you would have 3 different opinions about what you were reading. Pros, cons, well, what about this? What about that? There was this creative spirit in the air. There was this playfulness. I have to tell you, I felt it again today, coming back. As I was greeted at the door by several different people I'd never met before, but talked to me as if we'd been friends forever. And as poor Lauren was running around trying to manage and make sure that everybody had everything that they needed and wondering who was going to make coffee, and as I began looking for my worship associate, thank you, Pam, I felt it again. Blessings need time. They need to be grown and cultivated and cared for, and that takes time. They begin as seeds, and with time they grow, and the bud forms, and then they mature, and they ripen into the fruit that feeds our spirits and nourishes our souls. And the fruit of blessing is fruit that we can share with others to feed their spirits and nourish their souls. And then those whose spirits have been fed and souls nourished can share with still others and feed and nourish them. I wonder, what would the world be like with all those spirits and souls fed and nourished by the fruit of blessing? I just wonder what that world would be like. I mean, let's just think about that for a moment. Can you imagine it? It's exciting to think about, but I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit because blessings need more than just time. They need something else. I mean, any good gardener will tell you if a fruit sits on the vine for too long, it begins to rot. And then it's no good to anyone, except to maybe the worms. We're not here to feed worms, we're here to feed each other. Blessing needs a container, a vessel into which the elements of blessedness can be poured. They need a container, but not just any container. They need a vessel that can hold elements such as story, wonder, creativity, and imagination. Blessings need a container that won't just hold these elements, but a container that has the qualities to give these elements time and the space to interact with one another. A container that itself possesses the qualities of blessing. Blessings need a blessed container. I'm talking about play. Does that surprise you? Were you expecting to hear something else? For many of us, mostly adults, play isn't really thought of as a blessed container, a vessel that can engage imagination and wonder. For many of us, play is more like a vehicle to escape from the stress and the harsh reality of our lives as human beings. For many, play is it's an event, it's an activity, it's a game that has a purpose, and the purpose is to acquire something tangible, money, power. But play, it's an experience. It's an experience that we engage in simply for the sake of the experience. An experience whose purpose brings deeper insight into ourselves, into others, and connects us to something far deeper and much far beyond us. A good transcendentalist would say it connects us to the transcendent or the divine. A good pagan would say it connects us to the earth. And I think you're all right. For many, play is a recent phenomenon. It's something that historically has developed just maybe sometime past the Industrial Revolution, when we suddenly found ourselves with more money and more leisure time and space to do something other than just work. But play is very, very old. It has a deep and it has a rich history that goes back to the beginning, back to the very beginning. It's always been with us. In fact, it's a part of us. You don't have to tell a child what play is. They know it. It's in their DNA. They're hardwired. And it's so palpable that it's difficult to be in a room with a child for more than a few minutes without finding yourself engaged in some type of play. I'll never forget the first Christmas when my son was born. First child, first Christmas. And we bought them this great big, what Power Wheels. It was a car. You could sit in it, it had a battery, and you could drive it around, And he got in it and he rode it to the end of the driveway, and then he got out and he went inside and he played with the box that it came in. And I was too big to drive it myself, so eventually he discovered it again, but the box, that was for him. That was his play. My favorite theologian, Mr. Rogers, said this about play. Play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning. But for children, play is serious learning. Play is really the work of childhood. When children pretend, they're using their imaginations to move beyond the bounds of reality. A stick can be a magic wand. A sock can be a puppet. A small child can be a superhero. At the hospital where I work, it's a pediatric hospital, we talk an awful lot about superheroes. At a critical juncture in his adult life, the psychologist Carl Jung retreated to his homes on the banks of a lake in Switzerland and spent hours on the banks of the lake playing in the sand. He emerged from his depression, and as it lifted, he entered a new and vibrant and creative period of his life. And in his own words, Jung said, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct." The story I shared with you in the second reading comes from the curriculum of godly play. It was developed by an Episcopal clergyman named Jerome Berryman. And at the pediatric hospital where I work, godly play is one of the means by which we care for the spiritual needs of children who come to the hospital. Berryman was profoundly influenced by the work of Maria Montessori. And from his work with children, he came to understand that children have rich and complex spiritual lives, but they lack the language or other ways of expressing their deep experiences in ways that we can understand. In the UU world, we have spirit play. And it emerged from the same pool of work that Berryman and Maria Montessori did. Spirit play is very much influenced by the same people that influence godly play. What they have in common is their acknowledgement of the deep, rich spiritual lives of children that doesn't have to be imparted to them. They come into the world with it. It's a deep spirituality that's encountered and expressed through their encounter with sacred story and in the context of play. For Berryman, play is the language of spirituality. It awakens us to new ways of seeing ourselves, addressing our deep experiences and the limits of our humanity for which we often have no words, or at best, inadequate words to express. All play is centered around games. But these are different games. The games in the world of authentic play are played for no tangible goals, but just simply for the experience of playing. And in that place of play, a child can truly just be themselves. It's a place where other children meet them there, and they can be themselves. It's a place where our spirituality, our understanding of the transcendent or the divine or whatever it is, our experience of that is there and offers acceptance, it offers love, but more than that, it creates and it nurtures wonder and imagination and creativity. See, in the story like I just shared with you, it's not a storyteller telling a story. And you are not just the listener. In sharing of that story, you become part of the story. And so, when you're working with children and you're sharing a story, they become part of the story. They engage the story with their imagination, with their wonder, and they create something within that story that's about them, that helps them understand themselves, that helps them understand and express what they're experiencing in their world. This is especially helpful in a hospital setting because you are never closer to your existential limits as a child than when you're in a hospital. The myth of story is that it is simply for children, but it's not. At the end of sharing a godly play story, the storyteller will then invite response, usually by asking what we call wondering questions, because the story means something different to each person who hears it, who participates in it. I have a wondering question for you. I wonder how you heard that story today. In my mainstream Christian upbringing, it was very easy for me to hear that story with ears attuned to disobedience, shame, guilt, wrong. It's a story about differences. It's a story about the blessing of differences. It's a story about how we, as human beings on a planet that is at times chaotic, always in flux, always changing, that's violent at times, that's divided, good and evil, us and them, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. In the time that's passed since we were last together, the world has changed in unimaginable ways. And I don't know about you, but in the falling apart, I have found myself even more keenly and painfully aware of the difference and the distances between us as human beings. It's as though I took a big bite from the fruit of the tree of differences and just stood there with the juices running down my chin, realizing things, to use the storyteller's words, fell apart. That's my story. And I dare say each of us here has our own experience of the falling apart, that we've each come to know more keenly the differences that have come out of that, the falling apart. That's the bad news. The good news is that we are like children. We have the capacity to use our imaginations, to use wonder, to use creativity, to engage with this story, this falling apart in a way that brings healing to this world, that brings a little more wholeness. We're not like God. We can't make something out of nothing, but we can make something out of the differences. It's not going to take work. It's going to take play. We are going to have to find a way to engage with this world in a way that lets us use imagination and wonder and creativity to put things back together. Well, I realize that sounds crazy optimistic right now. But the story is just an expression. It's just a way to wonder with one another. My faith isn't in the story. My faith is in us. My faith is in me. I want this world to be better. And there are times when I would like to punch the person who disagrees with me in the face. I know that's not going to get us anywhere. I also know it's not going to get us anywhere for me to let them punch me in the face, that somehow we have to find a way to put things back together. We need to find that vessel that with time and with imagination and with creativity and wonder and with our story as a community of faith, as a community of people dedicated to pursuing love and truth and knowledge, and to take care of this planet, and to take care of one another. That's where my faith is. Are you ready for some good news? I think it's here. We just have to touch base with it. We have to be willing to engage it. I know it's here because I felt it. The first time I came into this congregation 10 years ago, I felt it. I saw it when Anita Thurman had snooker wrapped around her neck. I thought, where else can something like that happen but here, this container of play and imagination? I felt it when the Horizon Players got up and sang and danced, and they invited me to join in. I was George Washington, and you were Martha. I think it's still here, because I felt it, kind of like the scent of eucalyptus that's still on my hands. It's still here. It's still here. You're still here. I don't know what the next hour will bring. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if we'll have to shelter in again. I hope not. I've done enough of that. We've all done plenty of that. But I know that you, me, we're a people that want a better world. We're a people that want to love. We're a people that know the blessing and the fruit of love. Let's play. And let's begin that by singing together. That's a great way to play. So let's sing our closing hymn together.
I seek the spirit of a child who meets love naturally, a child who sings with world alive and meets the morning sun with glee. Children are real beyond all art. May I see joys of gift to our heart. I seek the freedom of a child who loves instinctively, who lies our day with just a smile and shines the light on all we see. Children are real beyond all fears. May I see love's a gift to our tears. I seek the wonder of a child who sees delightfully. Now clouds and cloud, now golden sun, imagination's true and free. Children are real beyond all lies. May I see grace a gift to our eyes.
Friends, it's good to see you. As we extinguish the chalice, we leave blessed by our connections to one another, to the Spirit of life. Walk lightly, that you see the life that is below your feet. Spread your arms as if you had wings and could dance through the air. Feel the joy of breath in your lungs and the fire in your heart. Live to love and be a blessing on this earth. Go in peace.